There you go.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks guys for joining us. We got a few people here. I know it's an odd time for you guys at 2 o'clock over there in Oregon. I apologize for that. But as you know, like I'm here at the Bronx Zoo with Wildlife Conservation Society. It's just a quick background on that. The Wildlife Conservation Society used to be known as the New York Zoological Society back in 1895, and that started. And then in 1899, the Bronx Zoo opened, I think in November. So they've been around for quite a long time. One of their big reintroductions was bison back in 1907. That was through the establishment of the American Bison Society with President Theodore Roosevelt and the initial director of the Bronx Zoo back in the time. By 1915, they had about 9 different herds that had reestablished in Oklahoma. So, yeah, it's been a great pleasure to be a part of the team here. I have my fellow keeper here, Alonzo, with me today. And so we're gonna, if you guys have any questions about, we'll start off just if you have any questions about zookeeping or how either of us got into the profession, we could do that. And then we figured we'd show you guys some animals. And if you have any questions after that, we can go from there and just play it by ear. So does anybody have any questions for us?
Well, I guess my question is what do you typically do every day, and what constitutes being a zookeeper, I guess?
My name is Alonzo. So the day by day, actually, I think it's quite different depending on, especially here in this building, because we do have sort of the space where we actually let some of the guests come and get sort of a closer sort of experience with a lot of our animals. So there is some of the programming. We kind of teach them about the different animals that we have here, like different life history stuff, biology, sort of their status in the wild as well. And then a little bit about the individuals. And then also a lot of the day though is spent basically doing husbandry sort of techniques for the animals. So that includes everything from getting them ready to come into this classroom, sort of helping them socialize, being ready to kind of meet people. There's definitely the cleaning aspect that I think is probably what we did spend the most of our day kind of doing, making sure that their enclosures are all nice and clean, that they have the proper enrichment to make sure that they're exhibiting those nice social behaviors as well. So we like to get them physically and sort of mentally kind of stimulated each day as well. I don't know, anything to add to that?
No, I mean, other than that, and then there's the positions in our department too, where if you're in the kitchen, currently, kind of where I am, we're preparing diets all day. So typically right now for me, for today was just preparing diets for how many animals we have here right now?
Too many. I'd say, I think the number individually, and this is including sort of groups, we have a bunch of roaches here as well. I think it's over 200 different animals sort of in the building as well. So there's lots of different diets that we need to prepare for each, because each of them get a little bit of different sort of food items there. So it's pretty holistic. We take on a lot of different roles here as keepers as well.
Yeah, so we'll train on different lines here, and we work with different things. So right now, as I'm training on the kitchen, my job is basically preparing diets and taking care of some birds in some of the rooms that we have here, doing those typical things, cleaning the enclosures, the enrichment, and such, and trying to build relationships and trust with those animals as well, so that we can eventually present them as ambassadors for the zoo.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I guess I got one. So I know it's a lot of husbandry work, but is there any behind the scenes data work or anything like that? Or is it pretty much just specifically working with the animals, hands-on kind of stuff?
Yeah, so there's lots of different roles that people sort of fall into here at the zoo. So for us, day to day, we don't have to do too much of that, I would say. Pretty much the only things we're filing on the reports are pretty much all of those things that we mentioned before. So we kind of track the enrichment and engagement that anybody kind of does with that. In terms of data entry, I would say that's probably about the most. But then you do have the roles that are doing a lot more of that sort of traditional sort of field work as well. And so WCS is based in, I think it's like 82 different countries around the world. And so for a lot of the data entry, they all have different projects that they're doing. So they definitely will have to sort of do a lot more sort of statistical sort of entering that kind of data, and then any of their findings as well. I'm not too sure more on that side.
Yeah, and unless you're moving into like a supervisory role as well, then you have a little bit more data. But as a position as a zookeeper, we don't have a ton of that.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a good question.
Yeah, go ahead, Evan.
Do you have a favorite like individual animal that you like to work with, or maybe it doesn't have to be favorite like the easiest. It could be your favorite like most crazy that does unexpected things.
Oh yeah, and I feel like definitely all of us would try not to play favorites for sure, but yeah, definitely it's going to happen, and not just on our end as well. One of the first things you learn about when you start during this career is learning that each individual animal is very much its own individual. And so they do prefer certain people over other people. And so you learn to kind of like take it on the chin, because not all the animals here are going to like you or even work well with you at that point. But then you always do get some that really take a liking to you. And so in particular, I would say, for example, my favorite animal, I would say, is definitely Riley, who's the clouded leopard that lives here. And so he and I, we have a really strong bond. But then right next to him, actually, his neighbor is one of our, or he is our African warthog Peaches, who absolutely does not like me. So there's definitely sort of that dichotomy that you get, but you get humbled very quick. I don't think you take it too personal.
Yeah. Yeah, same thing as he said. I mean, Lonzo's been here a lot longer than me, but I noticed that right off the bat, and off the bat, they're very tentative with you too. So off the bat, you think they don't like you, but they're just showing signs of after you learning to trust with you. And for me, I got attached to certain animals that I felt like called to, and that were kind of, had an energy kind of pulled towards them. I have this bat-eared fox that I work really well with. Then there's also a binturong who I love to work with. He doesn't always love to work with me so much, but I don't really take that personally either. He's kind of just like a little bit of like a craggy kind of older man kind of feel too. Yeah, but he's a great animal, and it's a great thing about the job is learning to build those relationships and do it slowly and be patient with them.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
No problem.
I got another question. How important is like specializing when it comes into zookeeping, like in terms of like mammalogy or herpetology?
Yeah, and so I would say definitely the keepers that work here, they do, you will see some sort of switching as well. And so with our department, we're kind of lucky in the way that we work with a little bit of each, I would say, sort of a class of animals. So we have mammals, we work with a lot of herps, so things like salamanders, lots of reptiles as well, lots of birds, which I would say that's what I really wanted to work with when I first started. Definitely the field of ornithology was the most, or it called to me the most, I would say. And that's kind of where I got my start here at the zoo. I was originally in the ornithology department, but I always did like working with lots of different animals. And so I just mentioned Riley is my favorite. He's not a bird. And so working here, I get to kind of do a little bit of both. I can work with him, who I really do enjoy, but I do get to work with a lot of the cool birds here as well. But that said, the zoo is split up into different departments. So the big four, we have the mammal department, who does a lot of the care and sort of husbandry for lots of the large mammals that you'll see around the zoo. So that's going to be things like elephants, giraffes, the lions, the bears. But then we, even the smaller things like mice as well. But then we do have the bird department, And so pretty much any exhibit that has those birds, they're going to be the primary caretakers for. We have the reptiles department, which is herps and reptiles there. And then our department is the ambassador department. So we work with all of the animals that might come and meet guests as well. So we'll be right there.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. But if you do want to specialize, you definitely can as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the specialization, like if you want to work in a specific department, that will only help you. Yeah. Anybody else? If not, we're gonna, show you guys a few animals if that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. You want to get some?
Yeah.
You can go first.
Actually, really fast while you guys are doing that, do you guys each have like a favorite like story of like, I don't know, when you were working with an animal, like something really funny or just cool?
Like I said, Alonzo's been here a lot longer. He probably has a ton of good stories for you. For me, starting out, there's like, we have an emu here for me. And the good story is we have a nice outdoor enclosure that we let her out in. And initially she was not really trusting me very much. So I had to move her into those outdoor enclosures quite a bit. And you kind of have to walk her out. And then, so one of the enrichments that we do for them was giving her a nice shower. She was using the rain. She loves the water. But after a certain amount of time, she decided that she no longer liked it. And so she charged me and tried to like kick me. So that part is kind of like, you get used to kind of like being aware and being aware of all your surroundings, staying present in them all the time, because any of these animals at any moment, especially at being ambassadors, as we work with them much closer than some of the other departments, we have to keep, our defenses up. But over time, the good story, part of the story is over time, she started to trust me. And now I can go up to her, I can give her hugs, I can go in and clean with her in there and do everything. So for me, it's a really good a showcase of what it takes to just kind of build that trust with that animal. Don't take anything personally, like we talked about before. But yeah, she came quite close. So that was kind of an interesting experience for me.
Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so we got Alonzo and Ty here. I'm going to turn this camera around for you guys. All right.
So coming in now, these are definitely two of our smaller guests here, but we have two of our fennec foxes. And so these guys, they are going to be sisters. And so right now I have the older sister, this is Chicky.
And then I have the younger sister, this is Louisa.
And so in particular, of all the animals that sort of come into the classroom, I would say that these guys definitely are going to be some of the most lively that we have. And so this is very much kind of like a playroom for these two. And so when they come in here, we usually do see a lot of running around, but being that as we do these programs during the day, we'll kind of notice that they will tucker themselves out. So it's really interesting right now that it's getting a lot darker. It's when these guys get a lot more active. And so we'll put them on the ground and we might see they might be a little bit more active than they usually are. So it might be hard to sort of track them with the camera, but I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah. So these two being fennec foxes, they actually are going to be the world's smallest species of fox. And so they're actually going to be native to northern Africa. And so these guys very much are a desert dwelling species. And that's why you can see they have, just looking at the coloration of that fur, you can see some nice sandy brown, which is really, really great for camouflaging themselves amongst the sand, making it really hard for any of those predators to actually track them in. But you also might notice that as they're running around, you're seeing a little bit of sliding going across the floor there. And so these guys, they do have hair that's sort of covering those paw pads there. And that's gonna make it pretty much so that when they're running around in here, they can kind of stop quickly and they slide just a little bit. But naturally, that hair is gonna be very useful kind of moving across their landscape. When the desert sand starts to heat up, gets very hot, that hair actually will prevent the paw pads from getting burnt by that hot sand, but it also helps act a little bit like a snowshoe or a sand shoe in their case, and prevents them from sinking in the sand when they're running across it.
Now, you might be wondering, if they are a desert species of fox, why in the world do they have such a thick coat? And Alonzo kind of alluded to it. These guys are nocturnal, so they're going to be most active when the desert is the coolest. Also, these guys, even though they are classified as carnivores, in the wild, they wouldn't only go after small mammals like rodents, but they've also been seen going after bird eggs, invertebrates, some plant matter. And even though they do look very, very cute, these guys are actually very, very accomplished scorpion catchers. And they've actually learned in the wild to hold down the stinger and then dispatch the scorpion in order to be able to consume them.
So these two in particular, I would say that there's some of all of our fennec foxes here, they're probably the two that enjoy being in the classroom the most. And so you might pick up on some of the squeals that they've been making. And so that's one of the noises that we kind of hear when they come into the classroom. And it's just a good sign for us because they really let out that noise when they're really acting sort of content there. But being that foxes are members of the Canidae family, which is the dog family, these guys are going to be the smallest dogs in the world, but they do have lots of the same behaviors that other canines will have. And so right now you can see those ears are nice and perked up, so they're very alert, very interesting in what's going on here, very hyper, as you can see, jumping up and down the benches. But if these guys were to be sort of dismayed or not too content with this situation, they do things like bark and they growl to kind of tell other things that they don't want to approach them, to kind of leave them alone there.
Does anybody have any questions for Alonzo and Ty about the fennec foxes?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I heard that they're really good at hunting scorpions by holding down the stinger. Do they have any resistance if they happen to still get stung, or are they skilled enough to usually not get stung by a scorpion?
That's a really good question. And so it's a little bit of both. So these guys are very skilled, so they do learn how to dispatch the stinger. But luckily for these guys, even though it's not a total immunity, it's going to be enough that a sting from a scorpion for them would be almost very similar to us getting a bee sting. It'll be uncomfortable, but it wouldn't be deadly.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Okay.
So I see one of them doesn't have like a full tail. Is there, like what happened with that?
Yeah, that's a really good observation as well. One of the first things a lot of people will notice, and so that right there on the bench with the shorter tail, that is Louisa. And so we mentioned at the beginning that these two, they are sisters. They have the same mother and father. Their mom's name is Eva, their dad's name is Carlos. But when Eva and Carlos had their first litter of kids, that was actually to the left, that was over Chicky's litter over there. And so basically we had cameras set up in the enclosure just because we wanted to make sure that everything was going well when she had her babies. And we very quickly noticed that Ava, she wasn't going in and she wasn't giving the milk to her kids as they needed it. When these guys are born, they're around the size of a ping pong ball, so very, very tiny. And they do need that milk actually every 2 to 3 hours. And so basically the scene was made to actually hand rear Chicky's group there. And so it was Chicky, it was her sister Sweet Georgia Brown and Freddie Mercury. They were all raised by the keepers there. But then the next year, Ava and Carlos had another litter of kids. This time she was very attentive, ready to be a mom there. And that was actually Luisa's litter over here. But she was so attentive, she actually ended up overstimulating that area. just because to get their kids to go to the bathroom, what the parents will do is actually lift that tail area. And so for us, we use a warm rag, and that sort of stimulates the bowel movements, gets them ready to go to use the bathroom in both ways. Mom uses her tongue, but she overdid it way too much. And so she licked so much, she stunted the tail growth of every fox in that second litter, and there were 4. And so you have Louisa, and then you have her 3 brothers, Tiny, Ricky, and Egoon, and all of them have shortened tails because of it. And so now the vets here at the zoo, they weren't aware of what was going on, but it was still decided that it was important for Ava and Carlos to raise their own kids, just because as part of the SSP, or the Species Survival Program, we wanted to make sure that when she had her babies, she knew what she was doing to kind of take care of them. And it wasn't a painful process, so we kind of just let her keep raising her kids at that point.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, guys, we're gonna bring another animal in for you.
They're so cute.
Yeah, they're so much fun to work with. They're very vocal too, and they get very excited. So first thing in the morning when we come in, they're the first ones that greet you. Just hear them. It's a nice way to start the day. Let's see what they're gonna bring in next. Do you guys have any favorite kind of species? I don't know. We could see if we have any of them here. Anybody?
I mean, I would love to see a lion, but I doubt you would be able to bring that in.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the lions really aren't part of the ambassador program. Yeah.
So how do you determine if an animal is like ready to be an ambassador?
Yeah, I mean, some of them obviously came from the illegal pet trade or were handed over as illegal pets, so that they were already used to humans being handling them. So that made it a lot easier. So then they got turned over to us and they were put into the ambassador program. Other times it would be just through observation and through participation with other zoos. If we know that they have babies or children that have been hand raised, they'll kind of work together. So all the zoos work together. And if you're looking for a certain species, they will come to us if there's no longer room at certain zoos. And that's how we kind of start to build the collection of animals that we can use here. But once they're here, again, we will kind of take them into the classrooms and we'll start building the training with them, doing things that they would need for any veterinary checkups as well. So all those behaviors are kind of natural for them and enriching for them as well, and making sure that their time in the classroom is stress-free.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So when an animal is like pregnant, do you sort of just like let nature run its course to see how like the father respond to it? And then like if something goes awry, then you guys go in? Is that how it usually works out?
Yeah, usually it works out. We would rather, the mother take care of the animal for the most part. If there seems like she's not very good at being mothering good, or sometimes just neglectful in that department, then we would have to step in. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Looks like they're coming in with somebody. Oh.
So coming in next, this is actually Sneedy here. And so Sneedy is actually one of our 2 African crested porcupines that we have here in the building. And so now being an African crested porcupine, you do get a lot of information about them just from that name that you're hearing. And so the crest actually refers to these quills on the top of her head that form what looks almost like a mohawk. And so that's going to be one of the many ways that these guys can actually defend themselves. But it's more of a feint in it, if anything. So they will actually raise those quills up that makes them look twice as big as they actually are. And so it's just going to be one of the warnings that they give to the many predators out in Africa, that they are potentially dangerous and that they might not want to mess with.
Yeah, crested porcupine is really unique because it is the world's largest porcupine species. And so Stevie here, depending on time of the year, she can be anywhere from 40 to 45 pounds. But we also have her brother Junebug, who is her identical twin. And he is a little bit bigger. He's about 55 pounds. With them being not only the world's largest porcupine species, but also with porcupines being members of the rodent family, they actually also represent the third largest rodent in the world. And that's only second to the capybara, which is the largest. You're looking at a rodent that can weigh upwards of 100 pounds. And then many people are actually surprised to find out that the beaver is the second largest rodent in the world. Now, what all rodents have in common are going to be strong front teeth, which are known as incisors. And those teeth will continuously grow throughout their life. And so it's very important that they have the ability to gnaw, which rodents are so known for. So here at the zoo, we'll give them not only hard foods like root vegetables, but we'll also give them enrichment items such as branches and wood blocks. And by being able to gnaw, that will naturally file down their teeth. Now, even though the African crested porcupine is an herbivore by nature, their diet will mostly consist of grasses, root vegetables, and fallen fruit. In the wild, they've actually been known to chew on animal bones. And that actually works out twofold for the species. The bones are full of calcium, which is very beneficial to them. And then being that bones are made of a very hard structure, that's also going to keep their teeth naturally filed.
Now you guys can see that Sadie is doing her best to explore the classrooms right now. But if you watch closely, especially your face, you can see that nose is pretty much constantly going there. And that's actually because being nocturnal, these guys don't have the greatest of eyesight. It's dark, so they don't really need to use that sense. But they're going to make up for that with the fact that they have a very strong sense of smell. And so in this room, we bring lots of different animals, so she can always smell lots of the different ones that have been in here. But then also being out at this time of the day, usually we're all kind of gone for the day. But being that it's a lot darker, she actually saw her go up to the window to investigate what's going on out there. Because just like the foxes right now, she's moving into the more active period that she's going to have for the day.
Porcupines are so known for their quills. And if you notice as she moves around, you can see a lot of different quills of different shapes and sizes. Now, even though the quills on the top of her head that make up her quill or crest is very wispy, technically on a porcupine, every single hair is classified as a quill. But they have different quills of different shapes and sizes for different purposes. So those long quills in the middle of her body and also her crest, she has the ability to raise them. And the benefit of that is to make them look larger to a predator. Now, Alonzo mentioned earlier that these guys are native to Africa, so they have to worry about leopards, lions, hyenas, and honey badgers. And so if they can look bigger, sometimes that can get them off the menu. Now, also, if you look at her tail, you may notice quills that look like hollow straws. And those are going to be her rattle quills. And so with their rattle quills, they can actually shake them very similar to a rattlesnake. And it's going to make a very loud noise. Some other warnings would also be stomping their feet, chattering their very hard teeth. And it's only until all of those warnings are heeded by a predator does the porcupine resort to just simply forcibly backing up. Or if they're being chased, they've been known to just stop short. Because there is a big myth with porcupines that they possess the ability to shoot their quills, but that is just a myth.
Now, porcupines, guys, are sort of split up into two broad groups. You do have the New World porcupines that you'll find over on this side of the world in North and South America. And then you have the Old World porcupines like Sneedy here that come from the Old World, so Europe, Asia, and Africa. And so the quills on each of those two different kinds are actually structured slightly differently as well. And so while these guys do have broad quills, the tips of these quills, they actually aren't barbed. But over here in the New World, those quills have actually evolved to be a little bit more barbed so that they're designed for going in and not coming out very easily. Another big difference between the two is all the old world porcupines are going to be terrestrial. So they're living on the ground or in burrows underneath the ground, whereas all of the New World porcupine species are going to be arboreal. And so they live up high in the trees there. And so here at the Bronx Zoo, we do have a couple different species. Over at the Children's Zoo, we have the North American porcupine. But here in the building, we do have African cresteds. We do have the African brush-tailed porcupine, which is another large species there, but nowhere near as big as C. And then we have the South American prehensile-tailed porcupine. And those are the ones who have the really, really barbed quills. And here at the Bronx Zoo, we've all sort of experienced being quilled, especially if you've been here for a while. It's not necessarily from aggression from the animal, but like Ty was saying, those quills, they're modified hairs, and just like our hairs, they fall out. And so if we're cleaning up too quickly or moving too fast with our hands, you will find them. From experience, I can tell you it hurts a lot. And that is how I know the prehensile-tailed porcupine quills, those hurt most.
Do you guys have any questions for him?
I know you guys said they have a good sense of smell. How does that compare to like dogs?
I would say, I don't know, so maybe it depends on the breed. I'm not actually too sure like comparison between the two, but I do know that both species do have a very cute smell, just probably for slightly different reasons. For dogs, they're going to need to track food. These guys are mainly sniffing around to find their food, which is going to be things that aren't moving, I would say. So definitely really good for smelling things underground and fruits there, moving around in the darkness, but I'm not too sure if dogs or these guys are gonna have a better sense of smell.
They're also going to use their sense of smell to kind of find their way back to their burrows. And being that they don't have great eyesight, like Alonzo mentioned, they'll kind of use a scent trail when they travel at night in search of food. This species has actually been known to travel upwards of 9 miles a night in search of food. And so they'll follow their scent trail almost like breadcrumbs back into their burrows.
So is there a specific way to tell a difference between like the female and the male, like her and her brother?
It's very, very difficult actually. We can tell them apart. They definitely do have vastly different personalities. I was talking about that scent trail that they leave. Junebug, when he's in the classroom, he leaves a much thicker, smellier scent or musk than his sister does. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen her really mark in the classroom, but Junebug, when he comes in, he was like leaking pretty much all over the place. And it smells terrible like at that point. But in terms of that, all of the sort of organs that you could look at to tell where the sexual organs are going to be inside. So on the outside, they look pretty much the exact same. There's no real sexual dimorphism between the males and the females of this species. The males do get a little bit bigger though.
All right, guys, have any more questions there?
Yeah, real faster. I'm assuming they're solitary, since you ever out by yourself, but is there, yeah, okay.
And so these guys are going to be pretty much solitary until they actually find a mate. Once they do find a mate, they will become monogamous pair as well. And so they'll pretty much mate together for life. They'll have children together that they take care of together for their entire lives as well. And it's really funny because I mentioned that these guys live in burrows, and so they actually will make separate rooms for each other as well, and for their babies. And a baby porcupine is actually called a porcupet as well. That's what trivia down there.
All right, we're gonna bring in another animal for you guys. Bye, Sneedy.
Sort of have to drive her out because now that she's in, sometimes she doesn't really want to leave.
So I assume their enclosures are nearby if they're just like walking.
Yeah, they're all within this building are ambassador animals. So they're within walking distance for us. Some of them are a little slower, take a little bit longer than us. If that's the case, sometimes we will have to crate them to help them here. Otherwise, it could be an hour to get down to us.
I'm very impressed how easy you all make it look to pet a porcupine.
Yeah, when I first started, there's definitely a little hesitation on my part. I've been quilled as well, and not from her per se, but cleaning her enclosure a little bit. If you're not looking carefully, you can get hit with it, and it's definitely not pleasant. But she's really sweet, and once she trusts you, like you said, you can see how comfortable she is with all the keepers here. She's a really great animal, and then you can kind of feed her. I like giving her corn. She loves corn. She's like the fastest corn eater in the world. She takes that thing right off the cob in like 10 seconds. Yeah.
She looks really kind.
Yeah, she's really kind. I've only worked with her. I haven't worked with Junebug, her brother, yet. So we'll see. Yeah, like Alonzo was saying, they have preferences, so he might not like me. We'll find out. I don't really know who they're bringing in next, so it'll be a surprise for me too. But that's, like Alonzo said, the cool thing about working in this department is the ability to work with a lot of different species. So even if you're starting out, oh, here they come. We'll talk after. I think I have an idea what this is.
So this is actually Trudy. And so Trudy here is actually going to be our 2-year-old female red kangaroo. And so Trudy's story is a little bit different than anybody else's that you've met today. But she actually did come from another zoo. She came from the Nashville Zoo. And there, Trudy, basically when she was born, around 5 months, she actually started hopping in and out of her mom's pouch, which is just about 3 months too early for Joey kangaroo. And so eventually she kept hopping in and out, and then her mom decided that she was not going to let Trudy back in the pouch anymore. And so at that point, because Trudy still needed milk, she actually came to live with us here at the Bronx Zoo. And so we had experience raising kangaroos and wallabies from especially our 16-year-old male red kangaroo who had just passed actually around the year before. And so they asked, because Trudy needed some help still, if we could kind of take care of her. And so when she first got here, she was very tiny still and didn't need that pouch. And so we actually created a pouch that we would carry around Trudy, or we would carry Trudy around in. And we very quickly sort of realized just why mom said no, just because she's always been very, very rambunctious, very energetic. So she'd be trying to get in and out of the pouch when we had it. She'd be kicking around. And so we sort of feel for mom a little bit, but we kind of got Trudy out of it. So it's not too bad. Now, being a red kangaroo, these guys are actually going to be the Earth's largest marsupial. And just like all the other kangaroos, they're going to be from Australia there. And so being that Trudy is only 2, she's still got a lot of growing that she's going to do. And typically the females will max out at just around 5 feet tall, and they can weigh up to around 100 pounds. The males, they get a little bit taller, so they can max out at anywhere from 6 to 7 feet tall, but they can weigh close to 200 pounds. And so you sort of get those famous images of those really buff kangaroos. And so those are typically going to be the males, but the females, these guys are actually going to be way faster. And so these guys can actually hop up to around 45 miles per hour. And then in a single jump, they can cover around 23 feet. And from a standstill straight up into the air, they can actually jump around 6 feet as well. So they're very, very powerful leapers there.
also use that leaping ability through their very strong back legs to box. And with Trudy here being 2 years old, she's starting to pick up on that behavior that they're so known for. And what the behavior actually looks like is they will rear up. They will actually balance all of their weight on that very strong and muscular tail. They'll engage with their front feet, and then with their powerful back legs, they'll kick. Now that tail of theirs is going to be very important. You can see that when they're not generating a lot of momentum through hopping, when they walk, they will use their tail almost like a fifth limb. And that's because their hips are fused. And so if you notice as Trudy moves around, she has to move her back leg at the same time. And so they'll use their tail for boxing, for walking, and then, like Alonzo mentioned, being that they can hop up to 40 miles per hour, a nice sturdy heavy tail will be very useful for being a counterbalance as well.
So now these guys are actually typically going to eat lots of small grasses that they kind of find out in the outback in Australia. And so here we will feed Trudy lots of different leafy greens as well. But we'll supplement that diet. We actually have 2 pellets that are basically grain based. And so they're going to be kangaroo pellets there. But then we actually will give her lots of different vegetables and fruits just because she really does like sort of those foods there. And so right now I'm actually feeding Trudy some of her favorite snacks. So this is actually just a mix that we make. We either call them Trudy Pebbles or Trudiums. And so it's actually just a mix of sunflower seeds, some craisins, and then some whole wheat Cheerios here as well. And so basically this is sort of operant conditioning for Trudy, just because like Ty was saying, she's entering sort of those terrible twos and she's trying to like box everything in her path. And so just so that she knows that she gets a nice reward if she's been good. And so we'll kind of give this to her in a form of sort of positive reinforcement there. And so with all of the negative behaviors, so things that we don't necessarily want her to do, like grabbing our guests when they're sitting on the bench, we sort of try to just move her away, but not reward that behavior. And so basically through constant sort of reward when she's being nice and good, Trudy's been on her best behavior for a while now.
You guys have any questions?
So was there like an event that happened that like triggered you guys to start like, oh, like we have to start conditioning her now? Like when so you just know like the terrible twos, like when she enters her second year, that's kind of when she starts to rile up.
Yeah, so basically with Trudy and actually another one of our animals, Tumbles, both of them, right when they hit around that age, we noticed that they started going after people's shoes, like pretty relentlessly. And so they would walk up to people's shoes and sort of grab their shoelaces, try to untie them and things. And so we just, we know that they still like coming into the classroom, so we didn't want to have to sort of take that away from them. And so basically the treats for Trudy was a way to kind of redirect them. Tumbles, he likes attention. So if you sort of give him attention, you kind of lose focus on going after shoes there. But we just noticed that she particularly would try to mess up people's shoes there. But that's as far as I think she's ever truly gone. But with us, she will try to box us, especially when she's just a little bit younger. She'd sort of run up to you, she'd kind of grab at your shirt, and then she just, it'd be a lot, mainly a grappling match there. But again, boxing is a natural behavior, so we don't want her not to box. And so we just gave her alternatives for that as well. And so what we did, we actually will hang up a bag that's filled with Timothy hay, and it's basically like a punching bag for Trudy there. And so she can grab and box at her heart's content. And then when she's in our outdoor yard as well, she spends a lot of time outside, especially before it starts to get cold here. She has a very low-hanging tree that she likes to grab and practice with as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I noticed she was rolling her head. Oh, she just did it. Yeah, is there a reason for that?
Yeah, and so that actually goes back to that boxing behavior as well. And so basically the males, you'll see them do it a lot more sort of aggressively. But basically, part of that boxing behavior, especially if they're boxing another kangaroo, they're kind of rear back, really strengthening those neck muscles so that they don't get hit in the face too much as well. And so you're sort of seeing her strengthening her neck there. Every now and then she kind of does it just because she doesn't want to move her body and she wants to see what's going on behind her as well. But that's sort of the main use of that behavior. She always looks weird when she does that.
One final. Is that it?
Anybody want to show?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to, but that's too hard.
I wouldn't say it.
All right, guys. So Trudy's gonna make our. We'll do one final animal for you guys, and then if you have any final questions for us.
I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. Yeah, there was you stopped because they came in with Trudy, but it was something about, I can't remember who asked it, but yeah, if you could finish that statement.
What was I
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was talking about the ability of this department to be able to work with a bunch of different species. I think that's the story we were going into.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So that's a really unique thing. Like I said, most of the other departments here are, like we kind of talked about earlier, are split up into mammals, reptiles, ornithology, and whatnot. So our department, like I said, that's the unique thing that we get to do here, is really get to experience all the different species. So like I said, for myself too, is starting out as a zookeeper here, it's a really good way to kind of figure out your way if there's a particular species that you end up falling in love with, and then to kind of expand that and explore it and either transfer into another department if you want to stay specifically with mammals or ornithology, or if you'd like to stay with the ambassador animals. So it is a good department to start with to kind of experience all those animals. And it's kind of a good way that you might never get to experience all these species in one setting again. So it's a really unique place to work.
And are you doing an internship, or do you have a full-time position right now?
Yeah, no, I got hired full-time here. So, and we had talked about it. I talked about the club there too, that, my position here came through, a lot of networking as well. I did some volunteer work with the Cheetah Conservation Fund, just doing a lot of fundraising events and working with, getting to meet the founder of the CCF and stuff like that. And through that, I met some people who worked at the zoo, and our curator here in this department had eventually joined our CCF New York chapter. And so I got to network with her quite a bit and build a relationship there. And that got my kind of foot in the door. So that's a really, important thing to network. But here we got another animal here, final animal.
Switch already.
Okay.
So this is one of the animals that Ricky has been working with a lot since he's got here. So let him switch over.
So this guy is a gentleman. So this here is Edward, and he's going to be our barrier fox. He's 3 years old, and he came to us from Brookfield. So Edward there had the habit of not sharing with his mother and his sister. So he would often kind of urinate or defecate on his food and stuff to kind of claim it as his own. And because of that, he was able to be moved to this location where we were lucky enough to have him here. And so being a bat-eared fox, there's about 23 fox species. 12 of those will fall into the true foxes in the genus Vulpes. Edward here falls in the genus Lotocion, and his scientific name is Lotocion megalotus, which generally stands for eared dog with big ears. And so what makes him kind of really unique is it also as a fox species is, as you can't really see maybe what I'm kind of feeding here. I'm feeding him some waxworms. So his main diet is going to consist of insects. So 70 to 80% of his diet is harvested termites and dung beetles. And so the bat-eared foxes occur in Africa. They're in eastern and southern Africa. And so there, you often find them behind hoofed animals as well as their dung kind of releases. They have a lot of insects and beetles, and they'll kind of follow that path. So they do a great job of pest control and population control of harvested termites, and known to eat about 1.15 million harvested termites per year. And with that, he's got a little bit different dentition than the other candidate family members. So in the other canine species, they have about 42 teeth. Everyone here could have the bat-eared foxes at 48 to 52 teeth. And so instead of 2 upper and 3 lower molars, like in the other canids, everyone would have 3 upper and 4 lower molars. And that's going to help again chew those insects. And so being the big ears here, we know that the big ears helps them, especially in that dry, hot climate. As with elephants, it helps them with their temperature control, acting like during a lot of blood vessels and that thin skin on those ears, kind of circulate the blood out to the ears, they get cooled off and circulated back into the body. And they're also really adept at hearing his prey. So he can hear really deep within the soil and by moving around, and he'll kind of tilt his head down, find his prey, and move and catch it and jump or kind of dig in. He's really adept at digging.
Like prancing too.
Prancing. So as a bat-eared foxes, they would generally have about 2 to 5 kids reproductively. And the father will do a lot of the raising of the young as well. So the mom can go out, and that's because of the insectivore diet. It would be hard to kind of bring insects back to the young there, so she'll go out as well. And the father can stay behind and do a lot of play and social grooming with the kids. Within their territory, they're going to have a lot of dens with entrances and exits to help them avoid predation and keep cool and act as a place to raise their young. Some of the predators that would kind of go after Edward here, you have some bigger cats or maybe some jackals or hyenas and some large eagles. But he does a good job of hearing those predators, being his main defense, being his speed and his agility. Edward here can reverse at full speed, and I've seen him do it, and it's quite a feat. You guys have any questions about Edward?
Does he have like a favorite insect? Or I see that you're feeding him mealworms, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, so out of the wild, it would be those harvester termites and dung beetles, but here, I would say the super mealworms that we feed him, he really likes and enjoys the most. Right now, he's getting some waxworms. But here, as a diet too, we also give him some canine meat as a zoo diet. So, they are opportunistic out there, but it's only 70 to 80% of their diet. So they will eat, small rodents and lizards and reptiles and things like that, and small mammals too. And some carrion if it's there.
Oh yes. Yeah, I feel like you might end up closing while he's in here. Especially he's one of those animals as well that's mainly nocturnal, so he's probably gonna be in the room with us until we leave for sure.
Yeah, so one of the training things with him obviously is to, as he gets in here, we kind of try to hurt him. He gets him rich as he comes into that prey quite a bit. But he's been known to overstay some of the programs.
Yeah, we can work on getting him out after you do the closing remarks. Yeah, I'm sure he's in there.
So guys, that's it for our animals here. We really appreciate you guys joining us. Do you have any final questions for Alonzo and I as to zookeeping or anything along with WCS, the Bronx Zoo, or anything else you want to curious about.
Well, I guess I'm curious, like what your guys' majors were, or what degrees you graduated with, if you went to college.
Yeah, and so I got my degree in biology. I was sort of doing environmental science for a while, and then pre-vet as well. So I graduated with my minor in pre-vet as my college vet. And then I got my degree in biology, but I always really wanted to work in the field of conservation. And so basically I grew up in New York, so it's harder in the city, I feel like, to find a lot of those opportunities. And so working for the Wildlife Conservation Society here at the Bronx Zoo seemed like a really good opportunity for me. And so after I graduated from college, I was seasonal here over at the Children's Zoo. And so we did a lot of the same things we do with the animals that I work with now, just with more domestic animals like goats and sheep. And they have zebu as well, which is really cool. And then I sort of went to the ornithology department after that, and I made my way here to the Ambassador Center. And so now I work with lots of different species here, which is very, very cool. But I still think I do really love the field of ecology as well. So I would say afterwards I sort of and work on getting my master's there. And it's really cool because you can actually do that through the zoo here as well.
Yeah, and for myself, as everyone might know, I'm still at Oregon State. I'm finishing up my degree there in fisheries, wildlife, and conservation sciences. And I was lucky enough to get a job here as a full-time keeper. But same thing with us. My goal, being here with Wildlife Conservation Society is because they have a great range of kind of departments that you can work on with different majors. There's obviously a big veterinary component of the zoo here as well. There's genetics, there's disease, and like Himal just said, there's ecology, there's botany, things like that too, to take care of all the plants here as well. And out in, so with zookeeping, if you're interested in kind of animal behavior too, it's really good. And with WCS, if you ever find the need, because it's such a larger organization, you can work your way and move around within the organization as well. And like Alonzo said, getting your master's with them, they help you kind of pay for that, I believe, which is helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Some final questions? All right. Well, again, thank you guys. We really appreciate you joining us. This will be recorded, so if you ever need to watch it again, or if you want to let somebody know to watch it, please do. And reach out to the Fish and Wildlife Club in Oregon State. Come join us in any other kind of events that they're holding there on campus and remotely. If you need to do that too, they do offer that component as well.
Thank you. This was really interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
This is really unique. Thank you so much. And for
You're
taking
welcome.
it, and for you and everyone else at the zoo taking that extra time to show us the animals.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We're gonna say goodbye, Abby, and I really, like I said, appreciate it. And I'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
You
Bye.
too.
Bye.